They laughed when the waiter handed me a tray at my own sister's engagement party. My cousin called me pathetic. My aunt said I'd always be nothing. But when my husband walked through those doors, their faces went pale. They had no idea who I really was. This is my story. If you've ever been treated like an outsider in your own family, this story is for you. What happens next will shock you. Smash that like button and subscribe, because this revenge is going to be absolutely epic. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single second. My name is Paisley, and I need to tell you something that most people don't know about me. I'm a stepdaughter, and not just any stepdaughter, the kind that gets treated like she doesn't belong in her own home. My real mother died when I was 8 years old. I still remember her laugh, the way she smelled like vanilla and lavender, and how she used to tell me I was her precious girl. She was everything to me, and when she died, a part of me died too. My father, Gregory, he couldn't handle being alone, or maybe he just didn't want to. Within a year of my mother's death, he remarried. Her name was Diane, and she came with baggage, a daughter named Monica who was exactly my age. From the very first day Diane moved into our house, everything changed. Monica got my mother's craft room converted into a princess bedroom. I was moved to the smaller room at the end of the hall, the one with the broken heater. Monica got new clothes every season. I got her hand-me-downs and thrift store leftovers. But the worst part? My father just let it happen. He became this hollow version of himself, always agreeing with Diane, always too tired to fight for me. I watched him slip away, choosing his new wife over his own daughter. Over me. Growing up, I wasn't treated like a daughter. I was treated like live-in help. While Monica had sleepovers and birthday parties, I was doing laundry and dishes. While she got a car for her 16th birthday, I was working part-time jobs to save for college. Diane made sure I knew my place, and Monica learned from her mother that I was beneath them. I left home the day I turned 18, worked 3 jobs to put myself through college. I kept minimal contact with my family because every conversation felt like swallowing glass. They never asked how I was doing. They never cared. But here's what they don't know. Here's the secret I've been keeping for 2 years. I met Harrison Westwood at a charity event where I was volunteering. Yes, that Harrison Westwood, billionaire, business mogul, the man whose face appears on the cover of financial magazines. He was there as a donor. I was serving food to homeless families. He said later that's when he fell for me. Not at some fancy gala, not at a business meeting, but watching me laugh with a little girl who'd spilled juice all over my shirt. He said I had something real, something genuine that he'd never found in his world of fake smiles and ulterior motives. We dated quietly for 6 months, and then he asked me to marry him. I said yes, but I had one condition. We keep it private from my family. I know it sounds strange, but I needed to know something. I needed to know if my family would ever treat me with basic human decency without the promise of money or status. I wanted to see if they could love me just for being me. Harrison understood. He respected my wish. So for 2 years we've lived this quiet, beautiful life together. I continued dressing simply, driving a modest car, living in a small apartment as far as my family knew. But the truth? I split my time between that apartment and Harrison's private estate, and then, 3 months ago, something else happened. My mother's lawyer contacted me. My mother, bless her soul, had set up a trust fund for me before she died. $50 million that I could only access when I turned 28. I'd just had my birthday. But that wasn't all. My maternal grandmother, Eleanor, who I'd barely known because Diane cut off contact with my mother's side of the family, she reached out too. Turned out she'd left me her entire estate. Another $30 million, plus property, plus my mother's jewelry collection. I had gone from pretending to be poor to actually being wealthy in my own right, completely separate from Harrison. My family had no idea. None of them had bothered to stay in touch with my mother's family, so they never knew about grandmother Eleanor's wealth. Then the invitation came. Monica was engaged to Brandon Fletcher, son of one of those old money families that thinks their lineage makes them royalty. The engagement party was going to be at the Grand Pearl Hotel, the kind of place where they judge you by your shoes and your surname. The invitation came with a note from Diane. I can still remember the words, "Try to look presentable for once. Don't embarrass Monica like you always do." I stared at that note for a long time, and something inside me shifted. I'd spent 2 years waiting, watching, hoping they'd change. This was my answer. This note was everything I needed to know. I called Harrison. I called my lawyer, Mr. Patterson. I called Grandmother Eleanor, and I told them my plan. Harrison smiled when I finished explaining. "You're magnificent," he said. "Let's do it." The night of the party, I dressed carefully. I wore a simple, cream-colored dress, nothing fancy. I put on minimal makeup. And around my neck, I wore the only piece of jewelry I allowed myself, my mother's locket. The one she was wearing when she died, the one Diane tried to take from me but I'd hidden away. I touched that locket before I walked into the Grand Pearl Hotel. "Mom," I whispered, "watch this." The ballroom was exactly what I expected. Crystal chandeliers that probably cost more than most people's houses, marble floors so shiny you could see your reflection, and people, so many people dripping in designer labels and superiority complexes. I walked in, and I could feel the eyes on me, my simple dress, my bare arms, my unstyled hair. I was a sparrow in a room full of peacocks, and they wanted me to know it. Monica saw me first. Her face went from surprise to disgust in about 2 seconds. She rushed over, her engagement ring catching the light, a massive diamond that probably cost a fortune. "Oh God, you actually came?" she said loudly enough for people around us to hear. "In that?" Before I could respond, Diane appeared like a summoned demon. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging in. "Why do you always humiliate us?" she hissed in my ear. "This is Monica's special day. Could you not have made an effort?" My father stood a few feet away. Our eyes met for just a second, and then he looked away. He actually looked away from his own daughter. I was introduced to Mrs. Fletcher, Brandon's mother. She had that particular look that wealthy women perfect, the one that says she's evaluating your worth and finding you severely lacking. She shook my hand like she was touching something dirty and then literally wiped her palm on her dress afterward. I could feel it starting, that old familiar feeling of being small, being nothing, being the unwanted one. But I reminded myself, not tonight. Tonight is different. I moved through the party like a ghost. People looked through me or past me, but never at me. I stood near the champagne table just observing, my hand touching my mother's locket for strength. That's when Diane's sister, Aunt Patricia, approached with Brandon's sister, Vanessa. Patricia was holding an empty tray, and without even asking, she placed it in my hands. "Make yourself useful, dear," she said with that fake sweet voice she uses when she's being cruel. "I'm actually a guest," I started. "Oh, please," Patricia cut me off, laughing. "We all know you're Monica's charity case of a sister. If you're going to be here, you might as well serve drinks. God knows you're used to it." Vanessa laughed, a sharp, ugly sound. "The help is getting bold these days. Just do what you're told." Several guests turned to watch. I could see the amusement in their eyes, poor Paisley being put in her place again. Then my cousin Jessica joined in, Diane's niece who'd always treated me like I was contagious. She was loud, making sure everyone could hear. "Paisley, still pretending you have a husband?" She laughed like it was the funniest joke she'd ever heard. "We all know you made that up to feel important. No successful man would marry you." One of Monica's friends chimed in, "Is it true you grew up doing Monica's laundry?" And Monica, my stepsister who I'd lived with for 20 years, she didn't defend me. She smiled. She actually smiled while they tore me apart. The crowd around us grew. This was entertainment for them, the poor stepdaughter being reminded of her place. Diane decided to make it official. She raised her voice, addressing the nearby guests like she was making an announcement. "Paisley is my stepdaughter, not really family," she said, each word a knife. "We tried to help her, but she's always been difficult. Some people are just born to serve, I suppose." My father finally spoke. "Paisley, maybe you should go." That was it. No defense, no protection. Just maybe you should go." Mrs. Fletcher turned to her friends and said, loud enough for me to hear, "The Fletchers have standards. Thank God she's not the real daughter." Brandon, Monica's fiancé, he looked uncomfortable but said nothing, because silence is easier than standing up for what's right. Monica grabbed my arm and dragged me to a corner, away from the main crowd but not away from their stares. "You're ruining my special day," she hissed, her face twisted with anger. "Why couldn't you just stay away? Nobody wants you here, nobody ever has." I felt my eyes start to burn, but I refused to cry. "Even your own father can't stand you," she continued. "You're nothing but a reminder of his dead wife. Do you know how pathetic that is?" She leaned in closer. "Go ahead and cry. That's all you're good for anyway." I looked at her, really looked at her, and I felt something click into place inside me. A calm, cold clarity. "I'm staying, Monica," I said quietly. "This is far from over." She rolled her eyes and walked away, back to her adoring crowd. The party continued. Diane made a speech thanking everyone for celebrating her daughter's engagement. Not my daughter's, just her daughter. Singular. Then came the slideshow. Photos of Monica growing up, Monica's achievements, Monica's beautiful life, and in the background of some of those photos, you could see where I'd been edited out, literally cut from the pictures, erased. I stood alone in that corner of the ballroom, holding my mother's locket. Around me, people laughed and celebrated and didn't spare me a second glance. I touched the locket and whispered, "For you, Mom. Watch this." And then the room changed. There was a commotion at the entrance. The hotel manager appeared, looking flustered, followed by what seemed like the entire staff. Security guards, assistants, people rushing around like the president had arrived. Whispers started spreading through the crowd like wildfire. "Is that? No way. It can't be." And then Harrison Westwood walked into the ballroom. My husband. All 6'3" of him, wearing a perfectly tailored suit, commanding attention just by existing. Behind him, Mr. Patterson, my lawyer, and beside him, a beautiful older woman in an elegant silver gown, my grandmother, Eleanor. The room didn't just quiet down, it went completely, utterly silent. Harrison's eyes scanned the crowd, and when they found me standing alone in that corner, they darkened. He'd seen my face. He knew something had happened. He crossed the room in long, purposeful strides. Every eye followed him. When he reached me, he took my hand and kissed it, his eyes never leaving mine. "Darling, I'm so sorry I'm late," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Then he wrapped his arm around my waist and pulled me close, protective and possessive. Grandmother Eleanor came to my other side and embraced me. "My dear child," she said softly. I watched the realization spread across the room like a wave. Diane's face went white. Monica's mouth literally hung open. Mrs. Fletcher dropped her champagne glass, and it shattered on the marble floor, the sound echoing in the silence. Aunt Patricia looked like she might faint. Harrison addressed the room, his voice carrying that natural authority that made boardrooms tremble. "Good evening, I'm Harrison Westwood, Paisley's husband of 2 years." The gasps were audible. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Harrison's gaze swept the room, cold and assessing. "I see my wife has been entertaining you all." He paused, letting that hang in the air. "Would someone like to explain why my wife was holding a serving tray?" Aunt Patricia tried to stutter out some excuse. "Oh, it was just a misunderstanding." Harrison cut her off with a look. He turned to the hotel manager. "Please bring me the security footage from the last hour." The manager nodded and rushed off. Brandon's family looked panicked. Harrison turned to Mrs. Fletcher. "Did you wipe your hand after shaking my wife's hand?" Mrs. Fletcher's face flushed red. No, that's not—" "My wife doesn't look amused," Harrison said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. I placed my hand on his arm. "No, Harrison. Let me handle this." I stepped forward, pulling out my phone. Every eye in the room was on me now, not looking through me, not past me, at me. I recorded everything tonight, I said calmly. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel word. I played the recording. Monica's voice rang out clear as crystal. Nobody wants you here. Nobody ever has. You're nothing but a reminder of his dead wife. Diane's voice. Some people are just born to serve, I suppose. Jessica's voice. No successful man would marry you. The room was so silent you could hear people breathing. Mr. Patterson stepped forward with his briefcase. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Paisley's attorney. He began pulling out documents. Miss Paisley inherited a trust fund from her late mother, $50 million. He held up the first document. Monica made a choking sound. She also inherited her maternal grandmother's estate, valued at $30 million plus properties and assets. Another document. Grandmother Eleanor spoke up, her voice regal and strong. Everything my daughter built, everything I built, now belongs to Paisley. As it should. Mr. Patterson continued. Combined with her husband, Harrison Westwood's net worth of $2 billion, that makes Mrs. Westwood one of the wealthiest women in the state. The Fletcher family's faces were ashen. Their old money was nothing compared to this. I looked at each person who had hurt me tonight, and I began to speak. Monica, I said, my voice steady, you called me nothing. But I've been watching your little boutique business, the one that's $200,000 in debt. I know because I own the bank holding your loan. Monica's face went from red to white in seconds. Diane, I continued, turning to my stepmother, you treated me like a servant in my father's house. But here's something you don't know. That house? My mother bought it before she died. The deed is in her name, which means legally I inherited it when I turned 25. You've been living in my house for the past 3 years. Diane actually collapsed into a chair. I looked at my father. Dad, you stood by and let them erase me. You let her cut me out of every photo. You chose them over me over and over again. For what? He couldn't even look at me. I turned to Mrs. Fletcher. You wiped your hand after touching mine. How interesting, considering your son's company is seeking major investors. Harrison's company was considering a $10 million investment. Was, past tense. Brandon looked like he might be sick. Monica, I said, returning my attention to my stepsister. Your loan is due next month. I'm calling it in, full amount. You have 30 days. Jessica, you work at Sterling Marketing, don't you? I acquired that company last week. Clean out your desk on Monday. Aunt Patricia, I bought majority shares in your precious country club. Your membership has been revoked. Diane, you have 30 days to vacate my property. Dad, you can stay if you apologize. Right now. In front of everyone. I looked at Harrison. Please cancel all business considerations with the Fletcher family. The breakdowns happened simultaneously. Monica started crying, real ugly crying. Diane was hyperventilating. Jessica was begging for her job. Mrs. Fletcher was trying to salvage the business deal. Aunt Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. Brandon was frantically texting, probably trying to find new investors. My father finally moved, stepping toward me. Paisley, I held up my hand. Don't. Not here, not now. I touched my mother's locket one more time. I gave you all 2 years to show me basic human decency. I came here tonight in simple clothes to see if anything had changed. You failed. Every single one of you. I looked around the room at all these people who'd watched me be humiliated and done nothing. Every insult, every laugh, every cruel word, I felt it. But now I'm done being your punching bag. Harrison extended his arm to me. Grandmother Eleanor took my other arm. Together we walked toward the exit. Behind us, chaos erupted. Monica was screaming, Paisley, please! I'm sorry! Diane was sobbing. Jessica was calling after me. I didn't turn around. As we passed Monica, Mr. Patterson handed her an envelope. The loan papers. See you in court. The hotel staff opened the doors for us, bowing respectfully. We stepped out into the cool night air, leaving behind the wreckage of their perfect party. In Harrison's limousine, I finally let myself breathe. You were magnificent, Harrison said, squeezing my hand. Grandmother Eleanor smiled. "Your mother would be so proud." And I knew she was right. I'd finally stood up for myself. I'd finally made them see me. 1 week later, the fallout was spectacular. Monica's engagement was called off. Brandon's family couldn't handle the reputation damage. Diane was frantically trying to contact me, but I'd blocked her number. My father sent a 10-page handwritten apology letter. Jessica couldn't find work anywhere. Word had spread fast in our business circles. Aunt Patricia had been banned from several establishments. The Fletcher family's company was struggling. I started a foundation in my mother's name. It helps young women escaping difficult family situations. Grandmother Eleanor is the co-director. My father has left Diane. He shows up at my office sometimes, trying to apologize, trying to rebuild what he destroyed. I'm not ready to forgive him yet. Maybe someday. Monica sent me a letter, too. 10 pages of apologies, blaming Diane, begging for forgiveness. I read it once and put it away. Some bridges are meant to stay burned. That night, I didn't just get revenge. I got my power back. For years, they made me feel small, worthless, invisible. But I was never those things. I was just surrounded by people too blind to see my value. Sometimes, the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong. It's building a life so beautiful that their opinions become irrelevant. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button right now. Share this with anyone who's ever been underestimated or treated like they don't matter. Drop a comment telling me, what would you have done in Paisley's position? Subscribe because I bring you powerful stories like this every single week. Remember, your value doesn't decrease based on someone's inability to see your worth. Never let them dim your light. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay powerful.